Okay, so sorry about that. So I'll just go on back to chapter 10. We hadn't started reading yet. So as I was saying, chapter 10, 11, we'll be talking about the generations of Noah. And remember what I said at the beginning. The book of Genesis is written first, there is this overview or synopsis of everything, and then it begins later to explain what happens. Okay? So chapter 10, 11, we're going to be seeing the generations of Noah. Okay? Now remember, Adam's generation until Noah, they've all, as lost as many of them as still were alive during the flood, they've all died in the flood. Okay, so now this is a new beginning. So we're looking at Noah and the 7 others that survived the flood with him. Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and his 3 sons' wives, and then all the animals and the birds that were also, and the creeping things that were also on the ark with him. So this is now a new beginning that we're looking at. So the generations, again, just as it did in the time of Adam, it's going to go through Noah's generation. It's going to give us a synopsis. Why is Genesis doing this? It's written so beautifully. Genesis does this because there is just so much and so many people involved in it. So it goes through first and lets us know, okay, this is who gave birth to this was the father of this person, etc. So we see everything. For example, we're going to be hearing about Japheth's generation, we're going to be hearing about Ham's generation, and then we're going to go straight to Shem's generation, through which Jesus' lineage comes from. Alright? So he just wants to make it through so you see, okay, these are the generations of Japheth, these are the generations of Ham, and then we're going to continue from Jesus. Alright? So we're going to read certain things. Now, what you're reading is not taking place at this point. It's just, like I said, an overview. Alright? Later it's going to begin to explain when these things took place. Alright? So I hope with that having been said, I'm going to jump right into chapter 10. Verse 1. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Note that they are not written out in the order from the elder to the youngest. No. Right? You're going to see later. Okay? It's going to explain. So now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. In the book of Ezekiel, also in the book of Revelation, where he talks about the war of Armageddon, for those of you that have heard that before. Now notice the people that are mentioned, the names mentioned: Magog, okay, Gomer, okay, Tubal, Meshech. Those names are mentioned both in the book of Ezekiel as well as in the book of Revelation. But we're not going there. I just want you to keep that at the back of your mind, alright, for now. Alright, so let's go ahead. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, Togarmah, and the sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, Dodanim. By these were the isles of the Gentiles. Note that, of the Gentiles. We're talking about who? Japheth, who is the eldest son of Noah. By these were the isles of the Gentiles, divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue. Tongue here would mean language. After their families in their nations. Note, at this point in time, they've not yet been divided into their lands. They've not yet been divided into different tongues, because at this point they are all speaking one language. They are all going together. Now, I've said that because we're going to read it later. Okay, but I'm just telling you so that as we're reading, you will realize this is a synopsis, just as the other parts of Genesis are written. Okay, synopsis first, and then it begins to explain. Alright, so note, here it's telling us, verse 5, by these, those are the children of Japheth, were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, meaning his language, after their families in their nations. Verse 6, and the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Phut, Canaan. Before I even jump into this, remember in the previous chapter, chapter 9, we see Noah cursing his son Canaan, or in our term we would call his grandson Canaan. So his youngest son's youngest son, Canaan. Okay? And we had said, well, some people just automatically assume it's God that cursed Canaan. No, it wasn't. You see, a curse that is causeless cannot take flight. Book of Proverbs. A curse that has no reason cannot take effect on someone. It's impossible. See, God never cursed Canaan. Noah did. Okay, we had addressed that in the last chapter, so please, if you didn't read it, go back there and see for yourself. Why I bring this up is because, remember the promised land. Where is the promised land? God is sending the children of Israel to where? To Canaan, to possess it. Why? Because it's a land flowing with milk and honey. So you see, some curses do not take flight. Like I said, go back to chapter 9 yourself and you read it. Okay? Verse 6. And the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Phut, Canaan, his youngest. And the sons of Cush, Seba and Havilah, Septha, Ramah, Sabteka. And the sons of Ramah, Sheba, Dedan, and Cush begat Nimrod. Note that. Cush, the son of Ham, the first son of Ham, is the one who begets Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, whereof it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom, whose kingdom? Nimrod, was what? Babel. Note that. Nimrod, the son of Cush, who is the son of Ham. Alright? Who is the last son of Noah. So Nimrod, the beginning of Nimrod's kingdom, verse 10, was Babel, or Babel, and Erech, Akkad, Calneh, where? In the land of Shinar. Note that. Whenever you hear the land of Shinar, know what we're speaking of. Alright? In the land of Shinar. You're going to see that a lot. Verse 11. Out of that land went forth Asher, and builded what? Nineveh. These are still children of Ham. Remember Nineveh? Where Jonah, alright, and the city Rehoboth and Calah, no, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. The same is a great city. These are great things being done by these grandchildren of Ham. Okay, alright. And Mizraim begat Ludim and Ananim and Lehabim and Naphtuhim and Pathrusim and Cashuim and Casluhim, out of whom came Philistim and Caphthorim. Excuse my pronunciation, this is not my language, so forgive me if I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrongly, but just excuse that, please. Verse 15. And Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusites, and the Amorites, and the Girgashites, and the Hivites, and the Archites, and the Sinites, and the Arvadites, and the Zemarites, and the Hamathites. And afterwards were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. Afterwards, we're going to find out when that afterwards took place. And the borders of the Canaanites was from Sidon, as thou comest to Gerar, unto where? Gaza. Remember where Gaza is? It's in Israel. As thou goest unto present Israel, as thou goest unto Sodom and Gomorrah, and Admah, and Zeboim, even unto Lasha. Okay? These are the sons of Ham, after their families, after their tongues, in their countries, and in their nations. So for all those people that we've mentioned, these are the sons, the grandsons of, and great-grandsons of Ham, who is the last son of Noah. All right? The one that was cursed, the one whose son was cursed off by Noah. All right? All right, verse 21, the one who saw Noah's nakedness, in quote. Please, like I said, go back and read chapter 9. Verse 21, unto Shem also. Now, note the arrangement. They started with Japheth, they went straight to Ham, they left Shem, and now they're going to Shem. There is a reason for this. Note, unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber. That's where the Hebrews come from. Eber, the brother of Japheth. Note that. Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of who? Japheth, the elder. Okay, so Japheth is the elder of Shem. And we had read in chapter 9 that Ham is the youngest son of Noah. So clearly you can see here, Japheth is the firstborn, Shem was second, Ham was the third or last born. Okay, so even to him, this is Shem, were children born. Verse 22, the children of Shem, Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lod, Aram, and the children of Aram, Uz, Hol, Getha, Mash. And Arphaxad begat Salah, and Salah begat Eber. And unto Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg. Note what his name means. For in his days was the earth divided. Remember, these people are living for years, hundreds of years. Alright? So this is not just happening in weeks. No, we're talking about hundreds of years. A process of 100 of years. People are multiplying on the earth. Again. For in his days, Peleg, note that, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. And Joktan begat who? Almodad, and Sheleph, Hazarmaveth, and Jerah, and Hadoram, and Uzal, and Diklah, and Obal, and Abimael, and Sheba, and Ophir, and Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan, and their dwelling was from Mesha, as thou goest unto Sephar, a mount of the east. These are the sons of Shem, after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, after their nations. These are the families of the sons of Noah, after their generations, in their nations. And by these, look at that, were what? The nations divided in the earth after the flood. The question is, when were the nations divided in the earth after the flood? This has just been a synopsis. When is it divided? We look at verse 25. And unto Eber were born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg. Then note, for in his days was the earth what? Divided. Do you see that? So in the days of Peleg, that is when the earth is divided. Alright? Okay? So just keep that at the back of your mind. We're going to see something as we go into 11. Alright? So Genesis chapter 11 from verse 1. And the whole earth was of what? One language and of one speech. You see that? So chapter 10 was a synopsis. It just gave you a rundown of Japheth's generation, Ham's generation, and then Shem's generation. Speaks of one of Shem's children or grandchildren called Peleg, in whose days the earth would be divided. Okay? So until that point, they will have one language. Something is going to happen at that time of Peleg. We're going to see it. Alright? So notice chapter 11 begins. After that synopsis of chapter 10, chapter 11 begins. And the whole earth was what? Of one language, of one tongue. That means they all spoke what? One language. Let's clarify that. And of one what? Speech. Okay, so if language wasn't clear enough, now you understand that they were all, the whole, absolute, the whole earth, everyone that lived in it, was of what? One language. Why? Because they all came from who? Noah. These are Noah's children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And they're all moving together. Don't miss that. That's very important. Okay? There are no... I don't know what their complexion was. I have no clue. The Bible doesn't give us any hints in respect to that. Okay? We don't know what language they were speaking at that point in time. The Bible doesn't give us any clue in respect to that. Now, maybe in the manuscript itself, it could be clearer, but from what we have, it doesn't give us any clear saying of either the language in which they were all speaking, neither does it speak of what complexion these people were. Okay? Alright, so verse 1, chapter 11. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from where? The east, that they found a plain in the land of where? Shinar. Remember we read that earlier? Where who? Nimrod, the great-grandson of Ham, built his kingdom. He builds Babel there and some other cities, but in the land of one? Shinar. All those were built in the land of Shinar. So here is where we're looking to see Nimrod building. So it seems to be Nimrod leading these people. Okay, he seems to be a sort of a king. The Bible doesn't tell us that, but it seems to hint to something as Nimrod being a leader, a mighty hunter before the Lord, who builds the city of Babel and the other cities where? In the land of Shinar. Okay, so let's follow the text. It says, and they dwelt there. Who is they? The whole earth, everyone, the people dwelt in Shinar. Previous chapter in the generations tells us who builds the kingdom, the cities in Shinar, Nimrod. And they said one to another, go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. Verse 4. And they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven. And let us make us a name. Note the reason for why they're doing this. Lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. What did God command Noah? Multiply and replenish the earth. Fill the earth. But now look at the reason why these people have decided to build a tower that reaches, whose top may reach unto heaven. And let us make us a name, lest we be scattered, how? Abroad upon the face of the whole earth. Could that be the reason why God comes to destroy it? I don't know. But look at their reason, and then when you pay attention to what God commands Noah in the previous chapter, maybe that might make more sense. So we're going on to verse 5. And the Lord came down. Note that. The Lord does what? Came down to see the city and the tower. Somebody asked me a question some time back, said, well, could the Lord not see from where he was in heaven? Why did why did he have to come down? Well, we're reading. Let's keep looking. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men built. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. Note that. And this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. Remember when this was done? When the languages are scattered, when the earth is divided? In the days of who? Peleg. In the days of who? Peleg. Let's not forget that. Alright? So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build a city. Now, this happens in the time of Peleg. We don't know when exactly, but we know that Peleg is, in his days, the earth shall be divided. Alright? Whether it's from the time he's born, or before his death, whatever the case is, during that period of his life, the earth was divided. And that's what we're seeing here. Alright? So the Lord, verse 8, scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called what? Babel, because the Lord did there confound the languages of all the earth. And from thence did the Lord do what? Scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. How do we have Australians? How do we have people in America? How do we have people in Africa? How do we have people in Britain? How do we have people in the cold regions, wherever you want to call it? How do we have people spread all over the place? This is where you see it. You see it clearly told to you. Certain questions, once you read, there is no need to ask those questions anymore. Okay, you see it for yourself. Okay, if you have any other interpretation, please let us know. Verse 5, and the Lord came down, verse 10. These are the generations of Shem. Note, now it's going to focus on Shem, where Jesus Christ comes from. So we've seen in chapter 10, the generations of Japheth, of Ham, and then we saw a bit of Shem. Now it's going to focus on Shem. Another synopsis. These are the generations of Shem, verse 10. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. Now, I want to say something quickly. Please note that at the time of what we just read above, verse 9, where the Lord scatters, verse 8, where the Lord scatters them abroad, changes their languages, note that at that time Noah is still alive. Noah is still alive. Noah probably is still with them, even at the time of Babel. Somebody would say, how do you know that? I thought he died earlier. Well, if we're just diligent, we can actually, without not much effort, I'll just tell you how you could go about it. Without much effort, you could actually find out how old Noah probably was during the birth of Peleg and even till the time of his death, because Noah outlives Peleg. Okay? Remember, it's in his days that the earth was divided, but Noah outlives him. Think about 50 years or longer than Peleg lived. So Noah definitely is there during this divide. Okay? I'll show you. I might not really go into it because it'll take a bit, and those that don't really like math, I don't want to get into all that. But I'll just give you a hint, and then you go ahead, if you're diligent, go ahead and check it out yourselves. Verse 10. These are the generations of Shem. Shem was how old? 100 years old, and begat Arphaxad. When? 2 years after the flood. Did you get that? So if Noah is 600 years old, 601 years old after the flood, when the flood ends, and he lives 349 years then after the flood, and dies after that. So that means there is still roughly 350 years after the flood that Noah is still alive. That's a long time. Don't forget, he has lived 600 years already before the flood. The flood begins when he's 600 years old. It lasts for 1 year. We have looked into all this. All right. After the flood, he lives 350 years. Okay. So let's keep that at the back of our mind. Now, having that at the back of our mind, how old would our Fraxad be after the flood? 2 years. He's born 2 years after the flood. So after the flood, Noah is 2 years after the flood. Noah will be 602. All right. While our Fraxad is born. Okay. And Shem lived after he begat Arphaxad 500 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Arphaxad lived, 35 years, and begat Salah. Okay? So from here, just go ahead step by step. Note when one is born, use that person's age to continue calculating Noah's age. I don't know if that makes sense. So for example, if Arphaxad is born 2 years after the flood, how old is Noah after the flood? Noah is 600 and approximately 2 or 3 years old. 602 or 3 years old. Okay? So if Arphaxad lives 35 years and then he gives birth to Salah, that means when Salah is born, how old is Noah? You're going to add 35 years to the 2 years after the flood, which is 37 years. So you're going to add the 37 years to Noah's age. I hope that makes sense. Like I said, I don't want to confuse anyone, so I'm just going to leave it there. For those of you who understand what I'm saying, then you can go ahead and please confirm what I've said. Okay, go ahead and calculate. I'm going to stop there for now, but it's very simple math. All right? So let's go on. And he begat Salah. And Arphaxad lived after he begat Salah 403 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Salah lived, 30 years, and begat Eber. And Salah lived after he begat Eber 403 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Eber lived 34 years, and begat Peleg. Know that. So add all those years. So when Peleg is born, just add all these years that these people live before they beget the next person. Add those years to the years of Noah, and you know how old Noah is at the point where Peleg is born. When he's born. Now note, it's in his days that the earth will be divided. So we don't know whether it's at the point of his birth or at the point of his death. But we know clearly that whatever the time period is, it's between either the beginning of his birth or the end, which is at his death. Alright? And Eber lived after he begat Peleg 430 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Peleg lived 30 years, and begat Reu. 30 years, and begat Reu. And Peleg lived after he begat Reu, how old? 209 years. So Peleg lives 209 years after he begets Reu. So if it's 209 and he lived 30 years and begat Reu, so that's 239 years. Yeah? Does that make sense? Peleg lives 30 years, gives birth to Reu. And he lives after he begets Reu 209 years. 209, 30. So he dies at 239 years old. Peleg does. Okay. Remember, Noah, on the other hand, lives after the flood 350 years. Please, when you calculate, you find out that Noah is still alive at his birth, even after his death. Okay? Somebody would say, oh, how do we know Noah had not died before? Well, if that would not be possible, because it tells us clearly after the flood, Noah lives 350 years after the flood. Okay? At the time that Peleg is born and Peleg even dies, it's not even up to 350 years yet. It's approximately 300 years. Please confirm. Alright? Let's go on. Verse 18. And Peleg lived 30 years and begat Reu. And Peleg lived after he begat Reu 209 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Reu lived 32 years, 32 years, and begat Serug. And Reu lived after he begat Serug 207 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Serug lived 30 years, and begat Nahor. Now we're getting close to Abram. You must have heard of him. and begat Nahor. And Sarah lived after he begat Nahor 200 years, and begat what? Sons and daughters. And Nahor lived 29 years, and begat Terah. Note how their ages are reducing before they give birth. Alright, begets Terah. And Noah lives after he begets Terah 119 years. Okay, their years are becoming smaller. Okay, and begat sons and daughters. Verse 26. And Terah lived what? 70 years. That was a lot at that time to wait till that point. 70 years, and begets who? Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran being the father of Lot, Abraham's nephew. Okay? Verse 27. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah is the father of Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Note, this is another synopsis. And Haran begat who? Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity, in the land of his birth. Where was the land of his birth? In Ur of the Chaldees, Babylon. Note that. So this is where Abram also was. Babylon. This is where God is going to call him out from. Babylon, what is called Ur of the Chaldees. We're going to see it later, but just pay attention to that. We had looked at Shinar. We know that Babel was in Shinar. Babel is the same for Babylon. Okay? And here we see that Haran, Abraham's brother, dies in the land of his birth, which was where? In Ur of the Chaldees. And Abram and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah. Now Milcah is where Rebekah comes from. Okay? The daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. But Sarai was barren. Note that. Sarai was what? Barren. She had no child. And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abraham's wife. And they went forth with them from where? Ur of the Chaldees. They leave there to go into the land of Canaan. Note where they're going, to the land of Canaan. And they came unto Haran. Now, Haran here is the land of Haran. Okay? Not the person. It's the land. The city named Haran. When was the city named Haran? Not necessarily at this point that we're speaking. Okay? Remember, we're looking from the point of view of the person that is writing, who is Moses, who wrote the Torah. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Let me go on. I had said something about that in the earlier chapters. Alright? And dwelt there. And the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran, in the land of Haran. Okay? Alright. So, that's it. We're going to go on to 12 next time. Now we're going to really start getting into more interesting things. We're going to start hearing about Abram, how his name gets changed, the promises that are made to him, how he either believes it or he doubts it, the things and challenges that he faces, even though a promise has been made to him by God. Yet we see some things that he experiences that we would sit back and say, oh, well, if God made him a promise, why did he have to still go through such a thing? Certain times God seems to be kind of silent, even for long periods of time. Yet Abraham still holds on to the word of the Lord. Okay? We're going to see who this Abraham is. The Bible calls him our father, in a sense. Okay? He's the father of nations. Okay? Through him shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. We're going to see all that. We need to know who this Abraham is and what he did and how he became righteous, not of works, but out of faith, believing the word that God spake, and being justified in doing the things that God had commanded him to do. We're going to see all that, all right, in chapter 12. All right, God bless you all. Speak with you later.